I was teaching out of like my townhouse, and I had the neighbor that actually called the city on me. But I'm cheap, right? I only want to buy schools that essentially nobody wants. And then I bought the business for $32,000.
Wait, how did you get him down from 180 to 32,000?
And then we actually had one that was great. She was an admin, she was a teacher, and then she eventually stole about 30 students from me.
Hey everyone, David Martin here. Before we dive in today, I want to talk about something that literally changed the trajectory of my music school. When I was running my school, I was drowning in spreadsheets and chasing down payments and spending nights doing admin work instead of growing the business. That's when I found Opus One. This platform automated my billing, let parents book their own lessons, and put all my communications in one place. Suddenly, I had time to actually scale. I grew my business to multiple locations with over 1,000 students. Now, I'm not saying Opus One did it all, but it gave me back the hours I needed to build the business I wanted. As you'll see in today's episode, smart systems are the common theme among school owners who successfully grow and scale. Book a demo at opus1.io or find the link in the show notes. All right, let's get into it. Well, Tong Liu, very nice to have you on the show. So happy to see you, my friend. We have known each other for a number of years, and I was just
Yeah.
thrilled when you said you'd be willing to be on here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely, Tong. Well, you've got a really interesting career in this industry. I
Yeah.
really wanted to hear your perspective because you're one of the few music school owners that you've done the startup thing, you've bought music schools, you've sold music schools. You're like doing all of it, right?
Yeah.
You've had experience buying and selling, you've had experience starting up from scratch. You really are a very seasoned entrepreneur in this space. And so I'm just really excited about this show because I'm excited to hear kind of, your journey along the way as you have learned how to do this and you've successfully accomplished this. I mean, as of this recording, I know you recently have
Yeah.
closed on another one. So
hmm
it's really cool to hear, that your journey, along the way as your journey is continuing. But I want to, before we get there, I want to kind of go back a little bit to how you got into the industry, like how
Yeah.
you got started. A lot of music school owners were musicians. Like that's for
hmm
me. I played
Yeah.
the piano and I wanted to start
Right.
teaching piano lessons. So like, what was it for you? How did you get started?
Yeah, so I grew up in China, and my mom kind of is a tiger mom. So I don't know if you're familiar with that term. So she's like, this is the career I'm picking for you, and you're going to
Mm.
do it. So
Oh,
I was homeschooled for 5 years from middle school into high school. And I was basically forced to practice 8 hours every day for
wow.
those 5 years. And it was really hard for me. And we would travel. So we lived about 12 hours train ride to central Beijing, right? So to the capital of China. And we would take train ride every other week to take piano lessons for 2 hours. And then we
Wow.
would come back and practice. So that lasted for like 5 hours. And my homeschool subjects was basically practice and also learn English. I didn't learn anything else. I'm like, I don't know nothing about biology. I don't know nothing about chemistry. I can speak
Wow.
English. So that was very, very traumatic / interesting journey I had to go through in my childhood. And I came to the US when I was 17 years old, and everybody was like, were you sad about it? And I was like, no, I was actually felt like freedom. So I did my bachelor's degree. I started in California, and my family ran out of money. I didn't have any tuition, didn't know how to pay tuition as an international student. It was very expensive. And then so I got connected with a professor I had met in China years prior. He was actually teaching in Idaho, BYU, Idaho. So I got connected with him. I was like, hey, do you guys offer a scholarship? So I transferred um, to BYU, Idaho, and finished my bachelor's there because the tuition was cheaper. And then after that, I did my master's degree. So master's degree was at University of Utah, and the tuition was, I still got a scholarship, but the tuition was way more than BYU Idaho. And I was like, I have to figure out a way to put myself through school. And what can I do? I can teach piano lessons, right? Like I already taught a little bit when I was in California and BYU Idaho. So I just started picking up some students. And I was teaching out of like my townhouse at the moment. And I had the neighbor that actually called the city on me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she sent me, like the city sent me a letter saying that you're not allowed to teach at this townhouse because it's not a place of business. And then I started traveling to students' houses because I'm like, I can't afford to rent a commercial space. I actually tried to rent a commercial space, and that was like my first business, and that kind of failed because I didn't know how to do it, and the rent was super cheap. I think I only like lasted for like 2 or 3 months because I was going to school and I was an international student. So I'm like, forget about that. So I just going to my master's degree and I started to traveling to students' houses. So I would, had probably like 20, 30 students while I was going to school. And after that, COVID hit, and that's when I graduated. And I moved into my then boyfriend, now husband. I just never left his house. I was like, I'm going to move in. You have a great space. I'm going to teach piano lessons here. And he would come home, and there would be kids with masks on and running in the yard. And so he was like, well, this is not safe during COVID. So then I rented a commercial space during COVID year. It was like $800 for like 3 rooms. And I just moved all of my teaching into there. And I think that's when I first met you, was that you were helping me coaching that school. And from there on, I grew to 250 students, and I bought another school in BYU in Idaho, Rexburg, where I went to school, and that kind of became history for
Wow.
the rest of it. Yeah.
Wow. So you were teaching out of the house
Yes.
during COVID, and
Yes.
then you moved. Now, how many students did you have when you were out of the house when you moved into that commercial space?
I think around 50 to
Wow.
60 students. So I
And you were
had a
teaching
good
all of
amount.
them.
Yeah, I was teaching. I had like one. I hired my first violin teacher while I was still in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. And then you transitioned to this commercial space where you had the 3 rooms, and that allowed you to really start to expand a little bit
yeah.
more.
Exactly. Yeah, and COVID year was actually probably the best year ever because people were actually looking for things to do,
Yeah.
and we had tremendous growth just in that one year. And so we had 3 rooms, and then we had to rent the space next door with 2 extra rooms. So we outgrew all of that, and then we moved into a bigger space with, I think it was 2,000 square feet, and renovated that whole space. Um,
So when you first moved into that space, you had the 50 students, you had the teacher. What were some of the things that you did to grow to that? You said 200 plus students within a fairly short period of time.
Yeah. I think one thing I've learned along the way, I think either you told me or somebody else told me, that you have to start working on the business instead of working in the business. Right. So I was teaching all of the students, and then I realized that I can't grow the school with just my time, and I have to start hiring other teachers to help me take on more students. And I'll also need admin to start taking on all of the leads. So I think once I have that realization, is that's when I realized that you can't just rely on words of mouth. I hate when people just tell me, just rely on words of mouth. I'm like, that's never happens, right? You have to spend money on marketing in order to grow. And you can't stop marketing ever, because that's my mentality. Once you stop that, you're just, stick at one spot, and you're actually decreasing your enrollment.
Yeah, yeah, and well, it's definitely difficult if you don't have any kind of marketing happening to
Right.
expect that you're just gonna organically grow,
Yeah.
especially at the pace that, like I think I don't know if you're this way, but I have always been impatient with
Yes.
my results. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I think that might be the curse of the entrepreneur is that
Yeah.
like it never happens fast enough.
Yep.
And you're always thinking two steps into the future, at least. And but it's even worse than that if you don't have any kind of marketing in place or any growth like plan or
Right.
strategy. And
Yeah.
that's what I love what you're saying. It's like, well, you can grow word of mouth, like it's possible. And there are some
Mm-hmm.
people that do that, but you cannot have the expectation that you're going to have that level of growth or that speed if you're just gonna wait for word of mouth. And so you didn't do that. Obviously, you
Mm-hmm.
implemented some marketing strategies. What were some of those strategies that you implemented right away to start to see that growth?
Yeah. So yard signs. So they
Love it.
were,
I love
yeah.
it. It's like one of my favorite strategies.
I know. They were like magic. And I stopped buying them from science.com, and you would see my yard signs all over the city. And people are always so afraid of like, hey, what if the city calls you and what can they do? I'm like, well, I'll just take it down if they do. And I worked in that business for like 2.5 years, and no city called me on that.
Wow.
It's yeah, like it just like every time it's gone, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go around another round of putting out those yard signs, and it works like magic. It's probably one of the best marketing strategies I've ever done. And then, eventually I get a little bit lazy, right? Like I'm like, hey, it's so much work to buy those yard signs. Let's try Google ads. It's more expensive, but I don't have to risk my life to put out those signs. So, and then, Google ads. So we relied a lot on Google advertisement for that. And then eventually we did a little bit of Facebook marketing, but we didn't do that until probably the most recent school.
Hmm.
We relied a lot on Google ads for the first two schools.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so you talked about these multiple schools. And so you had this, you had this commercial location, you had 50 students, you grew it really fast, 200
Mm-hmm.
plus students. When came the point at which you sold that school, moved to the next one? Like how did that whole process started? Or
Yeah.
how did that start?
Yeah. So I've had this school about like 2 years. I got a text from my previous professor at BYU, Idaho, in Rexburg, Idaho. And he was like, oh, this school in Rexburg is trying to find a buyer to buy their school. Would you be interested in talking to them? And I know the school because I actually interviewed at their school, and they didn't offer me a job when I was working there. So I got into contact with him. I'm like, hey, David, do you remember me? His name was David too. And he's like, oh, yeah, I did. I don't remember why I didn't hire you. So we kind of like hit it off. He had about 100 students at the time he was trying to sell, and he had run the business for 10 years. And he was kind of at the point that I don't want to run it anymore. I just want you to take over. So I bought the business very cheap. That's kind of my strategy is I buy businesses very affordable price. And then I didn't know that I was going to sell my school. It turns out 3 months later, after I bought the school, I was approached by Brady with One Music School. He was a big competitor in my area in Utah, and he had approached me like, "Hey, would you want to sell your school?" He had approached me a year prior, but I wasn't ready. And when he approached me this time, I was feeling really burnt out, and I was like, "Okay, let's talk." And I've only hold on to the second school for actually 3 months before I sold both and turned into a profit.
Wow, that's amazing. So just the
Yeah.
timing just happened to work that you got that into
Yes.
that one and then you were able to essentially flip it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Wow. So you sold them both at the same time?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so then you didn't have any schools.
Nope. No.
So you were a free bird with all this cash in your pocket.
Yeah.
And then what did you do?
I contemplated my life choice and my life decisions for a while. I'm like, what do I do with my life? I don't know what to do. Like, it's all of a sudden I don't have any life purpose, right? Like, I had goals in life and then kind of like reached those goals. And then I'm like, okay, I'm pretty good at this flipping music school thing, right? Maybe there's something in me that I can keep on doing it. So I was just searching for music schools for sale because I really enjoyed the process of buying it and, change the system into what I want and like build the team. I started talking to a lot of schools out there that they're trying to sell their business, but I'm cheap, right? I only want to buy schools that essentially nobody wants, right? Like, it's like a project. So I found Scottsdale Studio Music. So the backstory of that is the wife unfortunately passed away, and it was the wife's business. The husband was um, doesn't really know what to do, how to run the business. He had listed the school for $180,000 at the time. And Brady actually talked to him and then was like, yeah, there's no way this school is gonna be this much, right? It's had some 80, 70, 80 students. Um, I lowball them. That's kind of my strategy. I go in, I talk to them, and I make them realize that there is nobody else would buy this business because there's no value to it. And then I bought the business for $32,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, how did you get him down from 180 to 32,000?
I think I think after people reject him, I think it made them realize there is just no options because he had reached out to all of the local competitors in the area in Arizona to buy his school, and nobody wanted to buy his school. And
Wow.
to be honest, it needed a lot of work. It was like 10 years. And when we got into the school, there were 10 years of paperwork that was in the space. And the place was like run down. The carpet was so worn out. We had to redo all of that. It was like a project. So I think I just, I told them like, I'm your only option. You either want to sell it or you would have to hold on to this forever and it will eventually run to the ground.
So you essentially just you kept in the conversation with him.
Yeah.
You stayed firm on your price, on your
Yeah.
offer, and he eventually just relented because it sounds like there were just no other options out there.
No.
And I think a lot of times when people try to sell their business, they sort of have a fantasy of how much it's worth. A lot of that is tied
Yes.
to emotion
Yep.
and not always tied to actual dollars and cents,
Right.
which is where it gets, I think, really tricky. I mean, I even remember when I sold, it was like, it was hard. And we got a great price for it, but it was hard because it was my baby. It's like I
Right.
started it up, I built it and did all this stuff. And so it's like when you put like a black and white number on it, just like
Mhm.
this is it,
Right.
then there is something about that that's so tricky. So I mean, I can understand why people do that, but you're right. Like it's only worth what it's worth if it's
Right.
generating, X number of dollars, and that's that's what it's worth. So okay, so you went in. What I'm so curious about is like, okay, you have this school, you just bought it. Now you have to come in and decide what are we going to replace? Like, are we going to replace the carpet? Are we going to, like the systems to see like the software they're using? There's so many things I feel like you have to look at. What do you do first? Like, how do you organize all that in your brain?
Systems, right? Like they don't everybody was paying all sorts of forms of payment. So they have
Mm.
cash, they had checks, and they had mostly checks. And the first thing was like, I'm gonna get everybody onto Opus, right? That's kind of my thing.
So
Like, we need.
you wanted to get their CRM. You wanted to get
Yes.
all of their operations on Opus One, so that way,
Yep.
because that's the CRM you're used to, and let's be honest, it's the best one,
Right.
and that allowed you to start organizing things.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Interesting.
So we transferred everybody to the new CRM, and I lost one student because of it. And they
Wow.
had probably 70, 80 students. everybody was happy, right? Like, hey, we don't have to remember about bringing the check anymore, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just auto pay. And we spent about probably a week there cleaning everything, cleaning by, throwing out paperwork that was there for about 10 years. We threw out a lot of old chairs that looks like, grandma furniture. And we and we bought like we didn't even have to buy new chairs. They had so many, but they didn't use them. We just cleaned the space a little bit more, but we didn't paint and we didn't do the carpet because that's something that we negotiate into the new lease. The landlord actually did all of that for us. We bought it in August, and then in December, the landlord actually repainted the space for us and did the carpet. And we were living in Utah at that point. So then I have to learn how to run a school that is 12 hours away. So hiring the right admin, having the right CRM, having the cameras, all of that, it was very important. And it was good for me because I was living like my first school, I was living about 10 minutes away. And every time there's something wrong, I would be like, I have to be at the studio to solve this problem. But when you're living 12 hours away, you're kind of like, well, whoop-de-doo, I can't be there to solve the problem. What can I do to hire the right person or to have the right system to figure this out because I can't be there to figure it out in person.
How did you? Did you have a manager? Like, did you find a manager? Was it a teacher?
Yeah, we had hired so many different admins. I think that's the one thing that I still haven't figured out in this business is how to have the right admin person. So we had a lot of admin person, and then we actually had one that was great. She was an admin, she was a teacher, and then she eventually stole about 30 students from me.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that experience too. So walk me through that. How would you go back and protect yourself from this person that did that to you if you were to go back and do it again?
It's a hard one. I think having the separation of the role is important. She was having all access to all of her students' contact information because she was an admin and also she was a teacher. And I think if I were to go back, I would definitely separate those roles and just have very clear cut. And she might still be able to poach, right? Because you have these one-on-one conversations with your students. But I think it could have minimized the loss there.
I think that's probably wise. There's only so much you can do, right? Like, that's why I asked the question, because it's like when you really sit and think about it, these teachers are spending all the time with the
Yes.
students. You're not spending time with the students.
Mm-hmm.
And they really are the authority in that student's like lesson experience. And so when they go and decide to become your competitor and try to poach the students, they do have a strong pull. But I think you're right. I think it's dangerous to just give them full unfiltered access to the students and
Mm-hmm.
parents texting throughout the week and all that kind of. I know there are schools that do that, but I think when you've had the experience, which I did, and I had a teacher, he had no access to admin, but he just decided to go start a music school about a mile away, and he even took part of our name. And so
Wow.
it kind of was this confusing thing. Like, we even had a family. The only way I found out, by the way, is I had a family walk into our lobby, be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hey, we're here to sign up." We talked on the phone, and my admin is my manager. Actually, she was like, "Yeah, I don't think. Are you sure you're at the right place?" So she rattled off the name, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's not our name, but is that?" So she looked it up, and sure enough, there's his mugshot right there on the front,
Oh
of
my
the
gosh.
website. And so we realized what was happening. Like, he was trying to get all of his students to move
Mm-hmm.
over, and of course we were able to step in. But I mean, so he was just a teacher. He was
Yeah.
just a teacher, and he just decided to do that. So, I mean, there's only so much you can do, but I agree with you. It's probably not advisable to have have teacher and admin cross,
Yes.
without some pretty ironclad contracts in place to protect you, the business, from, from them being able to do that.
Right.
So, because I think what happens too is teachers get this attitude of like, well, if Tong can do it, then I can do it.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
can go start my own school. She did it.
Yeah.
Look how
Yeah.
successful she is. I can do it,
Right.
and they start to, there's kind of a little bit of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you experienced that?
Definitely. Yeah. I can definitely see why she did it. And it's unfortunate. They don't see the blood and sweat behind it. I think that's people think it's so glamorous what I can achieve, right? But they don't see the impact is on me emotionally, and how hard it is actually to build this, right? And it's hours and years of trial and error to get to where it can be today. It's not like magic, but it takes so much effort.
One of my favorite business coaches, his name is Stu McLaren. He said something really profound one time. He said, when people look at you, in your success, they're only
Hmm.
seeing your front stage.
Yep.
The way you look when you walk out on stage, you're all dressed up, you're all clean, you're saying your lines, and it looks perfect, right?
Right.
What they don't see is your backstage. People running around, scurrying, trying to move the costumes here and there, moving the set pieces, all that kind of thing. It just looks like chaos. People are stressed
Yep.
out,
Right.
That's like, you, in order to have the front stage, you have to have the backstage, and people don't see that though.
No.
And so they make assumptions like, oh, it must be easy. Tong
Hmm.
must have just sort of walked into it,
Right.
and so therefore I can do it too. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how prevalent that is. But that always stuck with me, that saying, and I think it's so true. So we have to, unfortunately, we have to kind of protect ourselves a little bit
Right.
as it relates to teachers. Okay, so you had this school,
Yeah.
right? And so kind of walk me through, like, what happened next? How did you get to the next step?
Yeah, so that was kind of pivot point to me was when the teacher stole that many students. I actually talked to a lawyer. I said, "What are my options? Can I sue her?" And they basically said, "How much money do you want to play on this Russian roulette? How much money are you willing to lose on this? Right? Like, is it worth for you to pursue?" So I kind of drafted. Like cease and desist letter, and I was so cheap. I basically like type it myself and have one of our HR person typed it, and then like the lawyer just read it, and then we sent it to her. And what really pissed me off was she had one of our current students' dad wrote me a letter back. And this student is still taking lessons at the school that I just sold.
Hmm.
The parent has two kids, and one of the kid is taking lessons with her at her home, and the other kid takes lessons at our school.
That's interesting. Yeah, like, what was the logic there?
No idea. They still do. They still take lessons at the
Yeah.
school. And I was like, okay, if I can spend like $30,000 to try to pursue this, why don't I spend $30,000 to open another music school? Because there is no end to pursue legal action with her, right? It's 30 students I lost, and I'll get it back. So then I opened my fourth location, essentially, well, the second one this time around with 0 student. And there are times that I question my decision on that because it's very, very hard to start from 0 student. I've never done it, and I tell everybody I don't recommend it to anybody that wants to start from 0 student up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Well, I mean, technically, you did start your first one, though, didn't you? Like,
Yeah.
teaching
But I
lessons.
was teaching, lessons. So that offsets a lot of the financial
Sure.
burdens. But when you're starting from ground up, the sign cost what, $7,000 just in
Yeah.
stupid signage. And pianos, we had to buy like 5 pianos, and you would spend just so much money into marketing, and the cost per student for those first year is ridiculous compared to the ad spends.
It's so I love this perspective. We don't hear this enough, I think, because so many school owners are they're starting up. They're starting their location, they're starting up a new location. But you don't hear this perspective very often that it's like, no, it's actually a lot easier to just buy. Just like
Yeah.
skip over
Oh
all the
yeah.
initial startup costs, just jump right in. Now, that's not to say that there aren't risks and challenges and
Yes.
things that you have to undo, right?
Right. Right.
So talk about that. Like, what would you say after doing this a few times? What are some of the things that you feel like you need to go in and undo?
I think have a good CRM system. Like that's very important. A lot of these schools that they either don't have one or they use other platforms that I personally wouldn't recommend to other people. So
You'd recommend Opus One.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's like you said, is the best. Like I was one of the first customers of Opus, and Sam was the one that was like teaching me how to do everything on Opus. That's how early I got into Opus.
What would you say, just a little rabbit trail here, but why would you say Opus One is the best?
I think it's just all in one. You don't have to have multiple platforms to perform your day-to-day operations. There's the payment system, the scheduling, very user-friendly for the front desk, and the automations where you can send automated follow-up messages where you alleviate a lot of admin stress as well. Campaigns, you don't have to use other platform to do that. Just just very seamless. The whole
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you go in and first things first, it's like, okay, what CRM are you using? What are your
right.
systems to sign up students to manage the schedule? That's the first thing that you want to check.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. What else?
And do they have what is their student policy? What is their makeup lesson policy? Are they using lesson mate? Are they just do not have a makeup lesson policy? What is their SOP on anything? Most of these schools that they don't have a SOP, and they don't have a system. The system is in the owner's head, and they just go with the flow.
How would you describe? So I know what this is, but just for the sake of the listeners that might not know this, an SOP, how would you describe that and why is that important?
It's basically if you were to remove yourself, the school can still run without you. Like how would you want the school to run if you're not there in person, or if you are, 1,000 miles away, right? So it's a system. It's a system where people can follow without you having to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And SOP is standard operating procedure. It's the thing that you said it so well. It's like if you're not there, like what happens? How does it get
Right.
done?
Right.
And you had the unique experience of buying a school that you were 12 hours away from, so you had to do this by necessity, right?
Right.
But I think every school owner, whether you live 12 hours away or 12 minutes away, you need to have these in place because it makes your school, I think, run more smoothly, but it also
Yes.
makes your school more valuable overall. So whether you sell it or not, to know that you have these systems, these SOPs in place for every possible scenario. So a parent calls in, they're irate that the teacher, whatever, they yelled at their kid during the lesson or whatever.
Right.
So then how does that get handled? Who handles
Yep.
it? What
Right.
is the process, right? That SOP describes what happens in the order and the chain of command and all of that kind of stuff. You had
Mhm.
to create that because you weren't on site.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and that's one of the new the in the first two schools, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have SOP. Like I didn't even have like an admin at one of the bigger locations. I was using virtual assistant because I couldn't find a good admin person to run the school. And so the virtual assistant was handling the day-to-day operations, and the harder conversations was done by me and another person. So that's the main reason I was feeling so burnt out. And when with Scottsdale, I had to learn to start writing all of these SOPs because I'm like, I can't go back to the way how it was running before. It was functional, right? It was great, but it can be better, right? I need to remove me from the operations even more so it can grow better. Uh, yeah,
Let's talk about teachers for a
yeah.
minute. I feel like this is one thing I hear often in the industry that's like, oh, I can never find the right teachers and I'm always looking for
Hmm.
teachers. What do you do? And how do you find teachers?
Yeah, so we actually have Indeed ads that we never take down. So it's definitely a struggle to find good teachers. When we find teachers, we don't necessarily look their college degree. So they don't need to have a bachelor's degree in music or they don't need to be a master DMA. I come from a very classically trained, background and doctorate students teaching young kid piano lessons and it was cringing because they can't talk their level. They don't know how to teach the kid this is middle C and let's play Mary Has a Little Lamb, right? Like they are so deep into their own music world, they try to complicate everything. So that's a realization that I came to realize that you don't need to have a DMA to teach some kids about middle C. And so when we hire teachers, we look at how their communication skills are. Are they friendly in their interview? Do they have a good personality? Like, can they be reliable? And that's a hard one to tell, right? That's a very hard one to tell. So that's what we look for in our teachers. And we started to implementing a lot of incentives to our teachers to make them hopefully stay with us a little bit longer. Um, yeah, but it's definitely a struggle with finding good teachers.
So you use Indeed to find them. They come
Hmm.
in for an interview. Is it a multiple stage interview or
Yeah, so we do two stage. I do the preliminary round actually. So I do the Zoom one and I see how their personality is and if they're good or not. And then we actually have like a in-person round where they meet with our operations person and they do a 15-minute trial lesson with them. So basically like see how they actually teach. We don't ask them to play anything. If they want to play, that's completely fine. Again, their performance skill is not linked to their teaching skill. So, and after they're on, we either hire them or we tell them, it's not a good fit.
so you don't require the teachers to have a degree?
Nope.
And so some of the
Mm-mm.
teachers that are coming in and teaching for you have maybe had some college or maybe no college, but
Right.
because they have the personality, the charisma, and they have enough knowledge to
Yes.
teach,
Right.
that's good enough. Well, and it's interesting because I've had so many conversations about this, and I fell in the same camp as you. I know not everybody
Mm-hmm.
feels this way,
Right.
but I personally feel like the relationship is the most important part, or a
Yes.
relational person, somebody that
Right.
cares about the student, that wants to, like those are the teachers not only that I like to have in my schools, but I found that they actually had the best retention rate, which is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. It actually, degrees did not necessarily carry over into like better retention, because as a music school owner, that's really the most important metric,
Right.
right? If we're just talking
Mm-hmm.
about business, I know there's other factors, right? But so let's set
Right.
those aside. If we're just talking about the business, the best teachers are the ones that keep their students the longest.
Yes.
So I personally did not find any correlation between degrees and retention.
Yep.
It didn't cross over. Now, I will also say, though, on the flip side of that coin, I did have teachers that did have degrees that had great retention. So it
Right.
wasn't like
Exactly.
it meant they had worse retention. It just, there was no correlation. I had some of my best teachers. In fact, my best teacher, she was with me the entire time I owned my school. It was like 15 years or something like that. She had no degree
Mm-hmm.
and she really didn't even have very much teaching experience when she came to me. She
Mm-hmm.
taught her kids. She taught her kids, music when they were growing up. She homeschooled them, and fascinating lady, but just really loved the young kids, like the
Yeah.
5, 6, 7-year olds. She taught with me for all 15 years that I had my schools, and she stayed with me. She had the best retention rate of
Yeah.
any of the other teachers. I had hundreds of teachers over the
Right.
years. She had the best retention rate of anybody. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But that's why I say, like it's not, there really isn't a correlation. So I think that's really interesting that you've kind of landed on that same thing. But here's a question for you. How do you retain the teachers? How do you
Yeah.
keep the good ones excited to stay with you and not want to go start their own thing or feel like, oh, I'm going to go to this other school that's paying maybe more?
Yeah. Yeah. So we started doing incentives. So we actually do it monthly and we do it quarterly. So basically we look at everybody's retention, conversion, and their attendance. So those are the three metrics that we're tracking every single month. And we basically list who is the best in retention. We give them cash price of who is the best in performance, like attendance. Then we give them another price. And then if you're 3 months in a row, you are achieving this, we give you another prize. So this is something that we started implementing 6 months ago, and it has been working fairly well to like a majority of our teachers. We still have teachers that are leaving. And with the new teachers, we started doing is we did the 30, 60 day and 90-day check-in / evaluation. So if they perform well within those 90 days, they actually has the opportunity to get a raise rather than you just wait for your 6 months evaluation. We do a contract renewal of every 6 months. So I feel like that has been helping a lot with the teacher retention. And another thing that we could do better is basically have more teacher get-togethers. That's something that I'm not the best with, to be honest, because I come from a background that just didn't value any of this part, right? You show up to work, you get paid, and you're happy, right? Like it's a
Right.
very new, like still a culture that I'm trying to understand. But I think having those incentives definitely helped with our teacher retention.
That's interesting. So you reward them for attendance. I'm trying to
Yes.
figure that one out. How can they control when a student shows? Are you talking about student attendance or are you talking about teacher
No.
attendance?
Teacher attendance.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
if a teacher calls out because they're, want to go to the coast or whatever and barbecue or whatever, but like they're
Right.
leaving and not teaching, you're saying, no, we're going to reward you
Correct.
for how many days you're there.
No, we only give out rewards for perfect attendance.
Oh, perfect
So
attendance.
exactly. Yep. So if you are coming in for the entire month of March, based on how many students you have, we're going to give you a reward.
Interesting. So you
Yeah.
could have multiple teachers have
Mm-hmm.
perfect attendance.
Right.
So this isn't like a first, second place kind of thing. This is
Mm-mm.
if you have perfect attendance, you get this incentive.
Right.
Interesting. What's the
Yeah.
incentive? What's the bonus?
It's like, I think $50 or something, like
Wow.
$50,
I mean,
$25.
that's
Yeah.
significant enough to get people's
Right.
attention, like
Exactly.
that's pretty cool. So all they have to do is be at every single lesson that
Mm-hmm.
they're scheduled to teach. What do you find percentage wise? Have you found that you've improved your teacher attendance?
Definitely. I feel like people are trying harder. And when we have these 6 month reviews, I think we had one teacher, we were like, you were absent for about 28 times within the last 6 months. And they're like, wow, I didn't realize. I'm like, yeah, you had gigs 20 within the 6 months. And it was like an eye opening experience for all of us, right? Like, we know that they gigged a lot, but numbers don't lie. And then after that, they do start to take less and less time with gigging because they realized they were taking so much time away.
Wow. Well, that's an inch. That's really cool. I like that. I've just never heard of rewarding based on attendance, but it makes total sense because you're
Yeah.
right. Like gigging is one of the things that we have to kind of fight against as school owners. It's like, well, no, we
Right.
want you to gig. We want you to have that's a really important thing in your life, whatever. But we also need you to show up and teach.
Right.
And
And
so
just the
it's
time off requests, like I did the math. I'm like, our admin spends what, 5 to 10 hours per every other week trying to find subs for these teachers, and we have problems of finding the right sub, and the parents are not happy, and then we have to, give them credit. It's a huge mess. And if I'm just giving that money to people actually show up to work, it's basically the same amount, and my
No,
admin can focus on other things.
it's a good point. Yeah, if they know that they're going to get a bonus just because they showed up, then
Right.
that might mitigate their desire to be like, well, maybe I'll just go to this gig and make some extra money. It's like, well, no, you'll make extra money if you just stay showing up.
Right.
But now that's interesting. That's really interesting. Community is an important element to the teacher experience. I know that was something that we started focusing on, and it really did pay off. It's kind of one of those uh like, you can't exactly put your finger on how it pays off other than I feel like it improves morale of
Yeah.
teachers, and I also think it improves teacher retention. Uh, but having an opportunity for teachers to gather
Right.
and to collaborate with,
Hmm.
sharing teaching ideas. We even had a teacher, we called it the teacher, what did we call it? Teacher training hub, I think. But it was a website where I actually went and I interviewed some of our most successful teachers at different things, like retention, of course, was one of them. And I interviewed these teachers like, how do you keep your students?
Yeah.
I would go to the top teachers with the best retention and be like, what do you do? And so
Hmm.
they would give me all kinds of ideas and all these different things. So I just recorded it and I put it onto this website, and I gave a username and login access to just the teachers in our school. I said, here you go. Here's a free,
Right.
tool for you to use. We also, we did monthly community gatherings. So we called them teacher assemblies, and teachers could show up. Would have like coffee and donuts or something, and we would have teachers speak at these teacher assemblies. Sometimes it was small, sometimes there'd be more people there, but that was a way to get teachers together. So there's a lot. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things you can do, but I think doing something
Yeah.
is a good start, right?
Right.
Something. um, and it's also a resource, I think, for teachers, and it's something that you can also point to when you say your retention is not great right now. You've just
Right.
been dropping students, and so here's something that I would encourage you to plug into more:
Yeah.
teacher assemblies, the teacher training hub,
Hmm.
whatever the thing is that you're providing. That's a way to kind of bring some community together. I think it's really important. And so I think your instincts are right, and that's a thing that you can add to your already robust strategy that you have with hiring teachers, retaining teachers. Your teachers are independent contractors, or are they employees?
They're contractors.
Have you ever had any issues with that with the state employment department?
No, knock on wood, not yet. No.
What's keeping you from just making them employees and not worrying about it?
The cost, I think, of the tax, how much I would have to pay in, I think that's probably the biggest
Okay.
deterrent.
Do you know what the cost actually would be?
I run some math on it, and I think it's extra, depends on the teacher, it could be extra like $7,000 for the year if they're making, you know, $30,000 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when we switched, it was about 15. I couldn't put a dollar number on it, but I think it was about 15% difference.
Right.
But it depends on the state, right?
Yeah.
Some states are a little bit more aggressive about going after businesses that have independent contractors, like service-based businesses. I know
Mhm.
California is famous for that.
Right.
I was in Oregon, not a lot different than California, believe it or not, but very difficult to get away with just classifying them as independent contractors. I got multiple phone calls from the state employment department, like phone
Wow.
calls, not just letters, but like they were and they never actually audited me, but they threatened to audit me. And
Oh, geez.
they would ask, this and that. And I was always ready for it.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I just kind of got tired of like looking over my shoulder. It's like,
Yeah.
the fine is pretty astronomical for if they do audit you and if they do find you guilty of misclassifying your teachers. to me, it was like, I can make adjustments in pricing. I can make adjustments in how I pay my teachers, like do more of a tiered pay and start them lower.
Yeah.
That to me, it was more than worth it. And actually, when I did make the switch, it was interesting. When I did make the switch, my teachers actually thanked me for it.
Yeah.
I'm not, I still not exactly sure why. I think it was because they felt more secure, I think,
Mm-hmm.
as employees. But anyway, it's an interesting little challenge that we have to face as school owners, whether you
Right.
have the independent contractor or employee thing. But yeah, I think you are taking a little bit of a risk there, but it does depend on your state
The
employment
state. Yeah.
department.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what are some financials that you track? Like when you're looking at your numbers for your school and like how like are you doing well? Are you not doing well? What are like some of the critical numbers that you are watching?
I think the total money that's come in, right? How much
Mhm.
money we are paying the admins, the percentage, and how much we are paying the teachers percentage wise, and how much money we are paying for advertisement. So those are the big things, the biggest spend that I have. Well, other than, rent, but it's rent is you can't.
It's fixed. Yeah.
Right, it's fixed, right. So all of the other expense, I do look them once in a while, every 6 months or so. I should look a little bit more often. Then I make adjustment on if we are spending, say, 60% on teachers, which we never do. But if that's the number, then you realize, oh, this is too much. Then how can we bring the tuition up and then hire teachers at a lower rate to offset that, right? You can't change the current teachers. They're at that rate. And if the admins are costing too much, again, same thing. Like, do we hire admins that are a little bit cheaper, which giving them less hours and then do virtual assistant instead? So that's something that I always keep an eye on it.
So what are the targets? So you're basically said you said payroll for your
Yeah.
teachers and your staff, your gross revenue, so total money
Hmm.
coming in,
Right.
and then your marketing spend, which
Hmm.
that's definitely variable depending
Yes.
on the time of year and all that kind of stuff. So what are those targets? Like what numbers are you shooting for?
Yeah, so it really depends on the size of the school. So I have to say that um, when we are having the new school, my ads expend are way more than it should be, right? Like there was a time I was like, okay, we should aim for 10% of the gross revenue, but at 10%, if we're only the whole month, we're only making like $10,000, bringing $10,000 for the new school, I can't just spend $1,000 on marketing. I never
Right.
grow this school, right? So my mentality is that we have to throw so much money into marketing at the upfront to flip the coin, right? So it's breaks even, and then from there on, we can dial down. But like a good 10 to 15% on marketing would be a good spend for me. And then for the teachers, we've been hovering around like 50% the gross revenue of the gross revenue. And then we do probably like 10 to 15% on the admins. And again, depends on the size of the school.
Sure, sure. So around 60 to 65% of overall payroll. I know your contractors technically aren't payroll, but we'll just assume that they are all part of
Yes,
payroll. So like teachers and admin staff, 60 to 65% is what
right.
your target is
Hmm.
with your school. And then you have another 10 to 15% because you're growing the school,
Yes,
right?
right.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew my school, the Scottsdale location, from 70, 80 students to 350 in 2.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're constantly we're spending so much money into marketing every month to keep it going, but it pays off at the end.
And when you're looking at your marketing and how much you're spending, where does most of that money go? Is it Google? Is it
Yeah. Google. I mean, it's on Google, and we do spend half of what we're spending on Google ads into Facebook. But for me, I like to see what's the customer acquisition cost at the end of the day, right? It's for us right now, it's about $200, which is not bad. But then the problem is the retention, right? And that's one thing that I think having, the conversation with you a couple of weeks ago was the problem is not in your marketing spend. The problem is in your retention. The music school owners always have to look at those two sides. A lot of them, they're just not spending enough money on marketing. But for somebody like me, it's like the sky's the limit. How much money do you need? I'll give it to you for the marketing, but I am not necessarily looking at retention. And that's where it's falling a little bit at the moment. But again, this is a new school. You can't have a retention of 2 years when the school just opened for a year, right? Like, so it does come with the more that you are there, the teacher is more stable and the retention will be better. Sometimes it just takes time.
Right. Well, and in addition to retention, because there's really three prongs to this. There's the attraction marketing, which is like you say,
Mm-hmm.
putting money out there, getting people to raise their hand, saying I'm interested. But then
Right.
there's the second one is actually the one I think most people struggle with the most. It's conversion marketing, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, let's call them every
Right.
single day until they say
Yep.
yes or no, or let's
Right.
email them or text them. But then on the back end, once they sign up and they transact with you, then there's the retention piece, which is like, are they going to stay with us 2 years, 3 years, one
Right.
year, 3 months? I mean, usually, I think for the startup, one of the biggest challenges, and you just said it, is how do you get them to to stay and not drop within 3 months?
Right.
Those first 90 days are like tough. And so
Yeah.
what have you kind of been thinking about, like, to improve that initial those 90 days to get them to stay in lessons?
I think we should probably do like checking calls with these parents. It's something that I do lack of. Like I focus so much on the growth, and that's kind of I'm really good at it. Like I do great with conversion and retention wise, I don't focus so much on it. So I think implementing checking calls, having like a reward system would eventually help as well. Again, I never grow my business to a point where I need them, right? I usually just sold them before it all happens. So my stage is always bring from 100 to 350. And when I start thinking about retention, I'm like, oh, it's time to sell, right? Like it's I never got to that point of trying to figure that out. So
That's such a unique perspective, Tong. I love that. I love that.
yeah, I never grow to the point where like, well, we're talk about culture. I'm like, no, we're talking about growth. Like every school is like growth. So it's maybe the school I'll focus on that
Yeah,
culture and
yeah,
retention. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and it's such a hard thing. Like, I think, I mean, you said it, 300, 350. Once you hit that mark, it starts to become more of a pain point, and it just gets
Oh
more
yeah.
and more, the bigger you get. And it's tough because if you're signing up, or if you're dropping 8 to 10% every single month,
Mm-hmm.
then that means you have to sign up more than
Oh
8 to
yeah.
10% every single month. And so the whole thing just starts to kind of break down
Mm-hmm.
because, and then, especially if your cost to acquire starts to creep up 200, 300, 400,
Right.
then the whole thing, like it eats into your margins. It's an
Absolutely.
interesting thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of different things here. I'm so impressed with what you've done, Tong. I
Oh,
really
thank you.
am. What's next for you? Where does the future go in your mind at this point? What are you thinking about? What's on the horizon?
That's a great question. I think I have to spend a lot of time trying to figure that one out. I still have this one school. We're at 130 students right now. We've opened it for about a year. The goal is to grow that to about 350 in the next couple years and sell it. Um, and go from there. I don't know. I don't know. My
Yeah.
mind changes every day. Sometimes I'm like, I can do another couple music schools. And sometimes I'm like, this is it. This is the last one I'm going to
This
do.
is the last one.
This is the last one. It's so hard. It's
Yeah.
definitely not easy. Yeah.
Well, you've learned so many valuable lessons, I think, in such a unique perspective, because you're buying and selling and then buying again. And, you're really getting, I feel like what it is, Tong, I feel like you're getting to the essence of what is needed to
Yeah.
run and operate a school. You have to
Right.
cut out the fluff, cut out the
Yes.
emotion and like the ego, and just be like, I need this thing to make money, and I need this thing to
Right.
get to a certain number so that I can then sell it and do it again.
Right.
What part of the business gives you the most energy?
Enrollment, I think.
Growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growth.
That makes sense.
Growth. Yeah. I love the growth. Can't plateau. I think that's why I tend to sell it after a certain size, because it gets harder to grow from that number, right? But from 100 to 300, it's like you're growing every single day. And yeah, that's the most exciting part for me.
If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't be so anxious. That's my advice to myself today. Don't take your time. I don't know.
Well, that's a great piece of advice. Take your time. What do you mean by that, though? What causes you to say that?
It's, you don't have to try to be successful to be so fast. The success will come, and maybe it will take longer. But take your time and enjoy the journey a little bit, rather than so goal focused. I don't know. I feel like that's a good advice for me right now, and I don't know if I'll be able to slow down or not.
Well, it's something I think we could all stand to benefit from, to heed that advice. I think that's actually very good advice, and I think you really are hitting on something, because as entrepreneurs, we are always in a hurry to get to our goals,
Yeah.
And even when we achieve our goals, it's like we're in such a hurry to create a new goal so that we can chase after that new goal,
Absolutely.
But to slow down and to just have some gratitude for what we have done and what we've accomplished, I think we could all benefit greatly from that. Absolutely, Tom. Well, thank you so much for being on here. You have such an amazing story, and congratulations on all your success. And I can't wait to see all of the future successes that you have in store. But so, Tom, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.